All right, back at the workbench, and we're going to complete the audio connections. We're going to start with the pair of balanced line outputs on the Behringer Knox 404, okay, which are on XLR connectors. So I won't go through the details of how to solder an XLR cable. You guys can definitely check out this video where I go through it in detail. I'm just going to show you how a chassis mount XLR receptacle looks like, okay? So this is what it looks like. It only comes in one assembly. Okay, this is the male chassis mount XLR by Neutrik. Female looks very similar, just has that locking pin, okay? And if you look at it, it is also correctly labeled. So if you go and solder this, this is the insert for female. You can see that the one on the left is pin 1, one on the right is pin 2, the one on the bottom is pin 3. On the chassis mount connector, it is the same. So on the left, you have pin 1. On the right, you have pin 2, which you can barely see. On the top is pin 3. The only difference is it has this tab here, which is designed for grounding the chassis mount connectors. And you guys saw over at the power section, we actually connected all these grounding tabs together amongst all the XLR connectors. And that includes the mixer grounding post. And all these eventually terminate into the Rane SL2. And we actually have an example here where when we completed the build, we recorded the main left and right output of the Behringer Knox 404. We played back a track, and as you can hear and see, right, that's the left output, and this is the right output. So it's a really clean recording. This is with the track playing back. Over here at the end, we can visually see where we stopped playing the track. And if we do scan amplitude statistics on this part, we can see it's a noise floor of minus 94.92 dB RMS, which I think is a good noise floor, right? And if we did have ground loop happening, and if we do hear ground loop, it's going to be really obvious. To simulate that, depending on which country you're at, you either end up with a 60 hertz hum or ground loop, or a 50 hertz hum or ground loop. This is a 60 hertz hum with a few harmonics. Right? And of course, 50 hertz will just be a few cents lower. Actually, that sounds like a few semitones lower. But anyway, you'll obviously hear if there is a ground loop happening, and that means you've wired something incorrectly. All right? But fortunately for us, we ended up with a clean audio signal path. All right, easy cable. We're going to do the XLR. XLR line out to XLR chassis mount, okay? Moving on to the auxiliary outputs on the Behringer. This one's a little different because it's on RCA unbalanced outputs, and we're going to terminate them into balanced XLR chassis mount connectors. So I'm gonna try and walk you through the wiring diagram. First and foremost, these are the RCA plugs that we'll be using. These are Neutrik RCA plugs. I will be reusing these. I'm actually not sure where this cable strain relief came from. Let me show you a close-up of that. So this is definitely not stock to the Neutrik plug, but I am going to use it anyway. It's a strain relief, a spring strain relief of some kind. You've got your cable clamp here. You've got the outer casing, and you've got the insert and RCA plug itself, right? So RCA plugs are unbalanced, so you just have your signal lead and your shielding lead. So the way it works is, let's say this is the XLR chassis mount on the Flightcase. You would still wire this similarly to any balanced audio connection. So you'd still need a 2-core audio cable where you have the shielding, signal positive and signal negative audio signal, where shielding is soldered to pin 1, signal positive or the red cable is soldered to pin 2, and then signal negative is soldered to pin 3. But over here on the other side for your RCA cable, red cable will still be soldered to pin 1 for your positive signal, but your shield and your signal negative will be shorted. And that is what is going to be soldered onto grounding for your RCA connection. Okay? So just make sure before you even solder, you want to place the strain relief and the outer casings first. Okay? Because you won't have an opportunity to insert them once you solder the cable. You can definitely add the cable clamp later, but I'll just place them there now. There, we got it. Okay. Let's check for continuity. All right, that's cool. Try the shielding. All right, so that cable works. So let's just close it up. You can move the cable clamp and just screw in the outer casing. And screw it as tight as you can until you feel the cable clamp grip onto the cable. There you go. You have a solid unbalanced RCA connection that will be terminated into a balanced chassis mount XLR connector. All right? Next cable, we're going to do the mic input on the Behringer, which is connected via a TRS balanced mic input. And we're going to terminate that into a chassis mount XLR input. So this is the TRS plug that we're working with. It's a Rockstone TRS plug. You guys have seen this on my channel already. You've got the boot, cable clamp, outer casing, and the actual insert. So here's a closer look at the TRS insert itself. So you've got your tip, your ring, and your sleeve, right? This is the tip pin. Usually you'll know if it goes into the center pin over there, that's the tip pin. This is the ring pin, and this is the sleeve pin, okay? So the way you terminate that into a chassis mount XLR is pretty straightforward. You get the tip goes to 2, the ring goes to 3, and the shielding goes to 1. All right, let's get to it. And there you go. That's your balanced TRS plug. You can definitely check for continuity. Tip goes to red. ring goes to white, and the sleeve goes to shielding. Make sure there are no shorts. There are no shorts. All right. Twist it as tight as you can until you feel the cable clamp crimp on the cable. That's it. This is ready to be soldered onto the flight case. Mic input is TRS balanced to XLR balanced. Okay. So as I mentioned a while ago at the bench, for this cable, we just solder the cable straight, right? Tip goes to 2, ring goes to 3, and sleeve goes to 1. Okay? Okay, last few cables to complete this flight case mod is the stereo pair of phono connectors on RCA on the second turntable, and how do we terminate that into one XLR on the chassis? And what do we do about the ground post on the turntable? So a couple of things that we're going to need. Of course, we're going to need a few cables, and we're going to need a few RCA plugs. So these plugs are just generic RCA plugs, still quality plugs, okay? Which will be for the phono connectors on RCA on the turntable. And this one will be for the mixer, okay? First pair is for turntable, second pair is for the mixer, okay? So I don't have unbalanced cables. I only have balanced cables here. So what we'll do is we will just combine the shielding and the white wire as such, okay? So we've got the shielding and the white wire combined, and that is what's going to go into your regular tip and shield RCA cable, okay? So how does the cabling work on the turntable, right? So I have your 2 RCA plugs, right? And you wire this up normally, where you have red cable goes into the tip, and then the combined shielding and white wire goes into the shield, okay? And red cable goes into the tip, and then shielding goes into the shield, right? On the other end, how do you terminate that into one XLR chassis mounted plug, okay? So the other end of the cable, you simply connect the 2 shieldings of both RCA connectors, and that goes into pin 1. Just make sure to mark which is left and which is right, because the left one goes into pin 2 and the right one goes into pin 3. Okay? I'm gonna put up a wiring diagram here. Hopefully you guys are able to follow. So let's get to it. All right, so we're done with the cables here, and we're gonna move on to the flight case to terminate them to the chassis mount XLR connectors. But before I go there, just wanted to show you these RCA cables. So I've marked them already. These are cable numbers. 1 is left, 2 is right. On the other end, we know that that is the left one and that is the right one. Okay, 1 is left, 2 is right. Just to reiterate, that means on the XLR plug, 1 will be shielding, 2 will be left, and I know that's the left because that's 1. So 2 is left, and then 3, which is right, that will be this red cable, and that'll go to pin 3. So that's how we're going to terminate this stereo pair of RCA connectors into one XLR connector. So we're going to do the next plug. The next plug is the unbalanced stereo phono plugs that goes to the Rain SL2 that terminates into one XLR connector, right? So again, we have a stereo pair here for unbalanced left and right phono audio signals. And we have the shielding connected to pin 1 on the XLR connector, right? So again, as a reminder, the way we had it soldered is pin 1 is the shielding, 2 is the left signal, and 3 is the right signal. So when you bring the second turntable to your gig, you simply need to connect an XLR balanced cable, connect the other end to the input, and then termination here is the same, and that goes into your left and right RCA cables here, which will eventually terminate into the SL2 Rain, all right? And everything else is pretty much standard. You have your TRS terminating into an XLR. You have your balanced line output on XLR terminating into 2 chassis mount XLR. And you have your unbalanced auxiliary outputs on RCA terminating into 2 chassis mount XLR. Okay? And with that, we have now completed the modification of this flight case. All right, that's it. I hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.